And we're back for another episode of The New Normal, where we take a look at the sporting world in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. Of course, Darrell Balknight with me, and our main man, Mr. Clark Ray, with whom none of this would be possible. How are we today, gentlemen?
Doing well.
Good, my friend. Thanks for having me. Good.
Clark, we want to take a look with you, of course, as we look at the effects of the pandemic on the DCSAA, all of the student athletes within the district and beyond. One of the things that I know were being looked at is that there were a ton of online courses in which student athletes and students in general were participating in. Will those online courses, will they continue? And if so, the grading for those, what is that, a pass-fail system?
Well, that's a good question. And you know that I think from the mayor's perspective, and he was speaking on behalf of the public school, the traditional public schools, I believe online instructional learning will cease, I think, May 9th. Now, and then we'll move forward with some type of grading for the work that has been done up to that date. Now, grading will be up to the LEA. Right, so the district public school system will determine how they're going to grade their students, as will all the other LEAs. And from our perspective, every charter school in the District of Columbia is their own LEA, as is, the private schools. So we will have to sort of, follow closely as to what they determine their grading scale is. But the LEA will set that scale, and we will accommodate that scale in order to determine eligibility for when we come back.
In terms of that grading scale and how everything moves forward from here, how are these different schools going to gauge academic progress? So for instance, if there is this pass-fail system that's implemented, how will a student know if their work is more A or A plus work, or if it's more C or C minus level, which is still a pass, but it doesn't accurately gauge where they are?
Well, and again, that's a good question. So, we have to leave it up to the LEAs to make that determination. I believe everyone's online learning is a little bit different than, the other. There's not a systematic online learning platform that everyone's going off the same playbook, so to speak. I would, I think the only caution that I would throw out there is there's going to have to be some kind of understanding from the NCAA, especially on those kinds of grades that are a pass-fail, because they calculate in those core courses for our student athletes. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe a pass grade in the eyes of the NCAA that I believe to be would only be considered a 1.0
wow.
on a 4.0 scale. So, LEAs are going to have to look really hard at how they grade, especially if it's on a pass-fail system, as it relates to student athletes who are looking to qualify to be eligible to play a Division I or Division II college athletics.
I'm going to take that and ask you a question out of left field, Clark, because I saw something on Facebook from a parent, and I said, I've got to ask Clark Ray about this. I saw a parent of a student athlete at St. John's recently, who will remain nameless, who said, with the online courses that are being taken here, in which, to your point, Darrell, all things may not be equal across the board, why not just reclass everyone? Just keep everyone in the grade that they are and reclass everyone to have them repeat the year. Someone else in that discussion brought up the idea of having it being left up to the parents, whether they want for their student athlete to be able to move forward or not, kind of the anti-leave no child behind.
Well, look, I think a parent's going to have to make that decision. I'm a parent of four, and I've got a second grader, and I've got a sixth grader. They're not on the athletic side of the spectrum yet, but I have to, as a parent, make a decision of whether I think, along with my husband, believe me, it'll be a dual decision of whether they got the academic instruction they needed, right, in order to move on to the next grade. You can't just say reclass everybody, because we certainly aren't going to look at those fall sports students who got to play their senior season. And in the District of Columbia, those winter sports, they got to fulfill their winter season. We may have to take a look at some who may want to come back to play their senior season over in a spring sport, lacrosse, which is not a DCSAA sport where we hold a championship, but baseball, softball, outdoor track and field. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
We're now in a crucial period where student athletes, a few last week signed with their colleges. More and more are making those decisions, or they've already made those decisions, and they're looking to getting to those respective schools. Is the onus more so on the NCAA to communicate with the students or with the schools, or is it on the student to say, hey, my high school has moved to a pass-fail curriculum. This is what our standards are, and is that where the NCAA should meet the student in the middle somewhere?
Well, look, I think this is a situation where we find that we're all in it together. You and I mean, we all know that those heavily recruited Division I students, they're on top of their game. They know offer A, B, C, D, and so they know where what they need to do in order to get to where they want to go. It may be someone new, though, that's just blown up. Like in basketball, we had a player that just blew up over the season that may not have been heavily recruited, that they now find themselves with the opportunities dangled in front of them. It's those students and those caregivers and parents that have to go back and look at and make sure that the courses that they took are going to be enough to qualify them. And then if their school I haven't heard of a school going to a pass-fail yet. There's a lot of talk out there about a lot of different things. If that is the case, I think the onus at this moment would be on the student and their guardian, caregiver, coach, administrator to maybe establish contact with the NCAA to see what, if any, kind of relief they're going to give in this kind of situation.
Clark, staying along the lines of the NCAA and some of the things that may or may not be been done. To my understanding, the NCAA, likely for the first time in recent history at least, is not going to require SAT and or ACT scores. I know that can be up to individual schools as well, but those parameters may be out of the box this year. What effect would that have on the student athletes if SATs and ACT scores are not required for admission?
Well, again, I don't know what effect that would have. It seems like they would get some sort of reprieve, which I think some would at this point in their life may enjoy. But as a parent and as a caregiver, it's not all about athletics, it's about education. So
Sure.
You want your kids to take those tests to see where they are. And it signifies some of the universities and colleges where they can go. So I wouldn't push aside the importance of an ACT or SAT, but if a college, those who are looking to get into college based on that, it certainly would be a little Christmas present come early type scenario if they weren't good test takers, right? I mean, some of them, like myself, I wasn't a good test taker. Didn't score really high on my ACT the first time, but I mean, so it would be a little bit of a reprieve. But man, as a parent and as a caregiver, dude, I'm going to want my students to study for that exam.
What would you say, quickly, Darrell, then I'll give it back to you. What would you say to the parents, and there's plenty out there who say that this is a great thing because the SATs and ACTs and standardized testing are not necessarily designed for the brown, black, and yellow student in the first place?
Right. Well, again, that's an individual choice. I'm raising 4 black boys, and I want them to take the test, right? That's a personal decision that comes from our household. So there's a lot of craziness out there in the world right now that's going on. So test taking is probably not the highest on the list for most parents, but I think it's something from an educational perspective that is very important. But if this is one hurdle we can knock off the track en route to getting that college scholarship, then for this class or upcoming class, it may be, like I said, it may be a little Christmas present come early for them. I don't think it'll be the norm.
This question involves both the educational and the athletic side. And we obviously can't look into the future, but let's say 1 year, 1.5 years from now, students who are going into college this upcoming fall or even this summer, do you think there's going to be more transfers or more students entering the transfer pool because of the parameters that were set by the NCAA due to the coronavirus, and students may not fit the academic bill or the athletic bill? Do you foresee more transfers in the coming year or so?
Well, look, I think there's a lot that is dependent upon that as well. I don't know if I see more transfers based on that scenario. What I do see is if we don't have a coordinated opening in the area, in the jurisdictional area where we live and where we participate in high school sports, if the district opens quicker than Maryland or Virginia, then parents may look to find a way to get their kids into a DC school, and vice versa. If the outlying jurisdictions open sooner than the District of Columbia, that's where I could see there could be some kind of a high transfer rate. But again, that is a bridge we'll cross when we get to it.
Get you out of here on this, Clark, piggybacking off of that answer there. Do you foresee, I'm going to ask you again to put your psychic cap on, because a lot of the times that's what we're doing in these uncertain times. It's the new normal. Do you foresee DC, Maryland, Virginia kind of getting on the same page to make sure that everything else opens up at the same time? You hear a lot of talk of that in terms of the businesses opening up at the same time from New York down to Virginia. So do you see the same action taking place in DC, Maryland, and Virginia schools?
Well, I think my mayor, along with the governor of Virginia and the governor of Maryland, sort of set the trend. These three individuals were working together long before these coalitions were forming in the Northeast and the Midwest. I have no reason to believe that they are not going to continue to work together for the better of the region. It seems to be a great working relationship between the three of them. And so the DCSAA will certainly take our lead from the direction that the mayor and her Department of Health give us in terms of opening. So with that being said, I would expect the three to continue to work together, and I hope there's a coordinated effort to open in the region.
Excellent. Clark Ray, as always, brother, thank you very much for stopping by and dropping knowledge to us here on the new normal.
All right, man. Again, the new normal. This is the thinking ahead, right? The new normal.
And we're back here at the new normal. Another shout out to Clark Ray for coming by and dropping knowledge for the student athletes of the DCSAA and beyond. Speaking of student athletes, bringing on one of my all-time favorites, Mr. Ruquan Brown from Roosevelt, on his way to Harvard. First of all, Ru, thank you very much for stopping by. How's your family doing in these tough times?
Man, we are so awesome. First of all, thank you for inviting me on, and we really appreciate you. Any opportunity to share love with our community is a blessing. But that's really what we've been focusing on, is finding ways to, through the new normal, as you said, really just share love. It's a lot easier when you can go out and give somebody a hug and go out and deliver somebody something and things of that nature. But having to kind of do everything virtually now, it's a challenge, but we're learning how to do it.
And that is why you will run for president one day. Listen, I want to talk to you about this. Obviously, this is your senior year. It's been a magical senior year for you, both in the athletic world, but especially academically, committing to Harvard. Then the coronavirus hit. This pandemic wiped out the final quarter. That means for you, likely no graduation, likely no prom. What has this been like for a senior to have your last ride cut short?
If I could be as honest with you as I can be, this is a blessing.
Oh.
It's a blessing because while I love school and I love learning, let me take that back. I absolutely love learning, but the institution that encompasses school can be very challenging, and it can sometimes be very redundant. And so to be able to learn from home and even learn some of the more important things about life, like love, it's just been a blessing, man, to be able to spend time with my siblings and really realize how much They actually get on my nerves. And just some of the smaller things that I didn't get a chance to really, really appreciate and take care of. This is a blessing. And I think there are a lot of people who are putting so much emphasis on these things like prom, like even graduation, which are staples, especially in Black homes where not that many people in the past few generations, maybe in your family, got a chance to graduate. We get to learn what's most important. And in this time, we don't have a graduation. We don't have a problem, but we have each other. And so that's what, for me, is the most important thing. It sucks to not be able to experience some of those things. But, hey, if you care that much, get dressed up nice, set up a camera, go to your living room, put on a nice song, and tango with one of your family members. That's how I see it.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Ruquan, one of the things that is well known about you is that not only are you a great athlete, obviously going to Harvard, but you in high school dealt with trial and adversity. One of the things that you've done, obviously, is started the Loved One Foundation, which is a campaign to bring gun violence off the streets and to hopefully get individuals to stray away from gun violence. After your teammate and your stepfather were tragically lost to gun violence, you said that despite all of that, the head of your village is Jesus Christ. Through all that trouble, through all that adversity, through all the hardships, what role has your faith played in the journey that got you through those tough times then and that has carried you to where you are right now with this new opportunity you're taking on?
Yeah, that's a powerful question. And I appreciate you for asking that, because I've been asked probably a million questions in the past couple of years, but that was probably one of my favorite questions. And to answer that, man, for me, family, Jesus comes first, and God is love, and it's all the same. And so when we put love first, that's why I'm able to do what I do, and that's why my family is able to take care of me the way they do. My faith has been the biggest part of all of my success, and even some of the things that people would look at as losses and failures. Jesus has just kind of kept me grounded, really. It's an experience that some people understand and some people don't. And I'm here not to push my views on anybody, but to shed light on my experience, because there are so many people who are inspired by my story. So I must let those people know that without Jesus, my story wouldn't be what it is. And I can share just a little bit about who I was before I gave my life to Christ. And it looked nothing like sitting in a video call with, the best reporter in the DMV as far as, youth sports and high school sports go. And so pre-Christ, my life didn't look like going to Harvard and being able to be a part of some of the opportunities that I've been able to be a part of. So 100%, man, that's Christ is my number one role model. And I'll add that I was sitting down reading with my girlfriend a couple of days ago, and I was reminded how important it is to take those huge leaps of faith, right? I go to a primarily academic institution, the number one public school in Washington, D.C. I play football at a school 10 to 15 minutes away from there. And then I decide, hey, I'm going to also start a business on top of that. That was not something that was highly encouraged by people around me. But it was something that I knew as I take my responsibility as a servant in my communities that I had to do. And so what I'm encouraging student athletes and adults and coaches and anybody that's listening to this is do it. If it's good, do it. It doesn't have to fit the norms of society and the norms of what we might be used to. But if it's good and it's going to bring a blessing to somebody else, go ahead and do it. Make it happen. And he'll make sure that he takes care of you on that path.
And speaking of that, that was phenomenal, and I appreciate you for sharing that. You talked about being a servant of your community. Washington, D.C. over the past couple of years has unfortunately seen a surge in crime and unjust works of violence and things of that nature that have been going on in the city. 2019, there were over 600 shootings, over about 150 murders. About 58 or 60 of those were of people under the age of 24. You being a businessman and you also falling in that category of being a young person, how do you think your foundation and your organization can help bring those guns off the streets and help raise awareness about love and friendship and community within these places that are highly affected by gun violence? Yeah,
there's a book out there, I can't remember the name of it, but it says that love conquers all. And when you look at it like that and you put love first and you allow love to penetrate our hearts, our communities, our spaces, is going to conquer all of the evils that we face. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to sit at home and be away from things that seem so important but are actually not that important, because it allows us to see what's really going on. And you sit back and kind of realize that, dang, maybe it's not really the guns that is taking these people's lives, right? We got to look at, why is the person pulling the trigger, right? And then, and once you look at the suspect, who is actually a victim too, when you look at their background and realize that, one, they don't have a dad, perhaps not even a mom. Two, they are 17, 18, 22, whatever, feeding more than one sibling and maybe some of their own children. And they have all of these burdens of the world on top of just being a black man in our country. You will realize that it's a lot deeper than the guns that are on the streets. And so I like jokes like me running for president and being the governor of DC, because I realize how important it is for our council members and our mayor and people of that nature to share love in these communities that don't have it. Because this is not about how quick you can get to a gun, because before there were guns, we took each other's lives in other forms. And my point is, when my company, through my company, myself, my parents, other people that we will work with will get to go directly into communities and give people hugs and sit down and have therapeutic conversation and cry with people and laugh with people. These are things that while school is going on, nobody's focused on that. They're focused on graduating. They're focused on going to prom. Things that aren't saving anybody's lives. And so Love One is just about putting love first in order to set aside and help save somebody's life. And we haven't figured out every single way that we're going to do it, but you will see us in your community, or somebody will see us in their community, and we'll be taking care of people.
Final question for you, Ruquan, and before I even get to that, allow for me to be clear. You being president is not a joke of mine. It's a vision, and it's more than a dream. It's one that I hope that you bring to fruition.
I appreciate it.
When I first met you, it actually wasn't on the football field, at least not to my recollection. It was at a track and field event, and you had a lot less muscle tone there and a lot fewer accolades then, but you came and you let me know that you would be on my radar and that I would know more about you. Obviously, you have brought all of that to the table, and even more so. As you look back at your 4 years of high school and you look at the life that you are leading as you head off to Harvard, what words of wisdom, what words of encouragement do you have for every black male out there in the streets of DC, every black male anywhere in the nation that's watching this right now? What words can you impart upon them?
Yeah, I think first it's tough to move on to some of our new beginnings, because we never get a chance to really fully heal and recognize some of the troubles that we've been through. So I think it's important just to first recognize any of the people that we've lost this year, last year, or really at all, especially when it comes to gun violence and things that are evil. So first I want to encourage everybody to recognize someone that you've lost, or someone that maybe one of their family members or loved ones has been lost. And then you can move on to figuring out what else it is you want to do. And so my first word of encouragement, or my first word of wisdom, would be to seek understanding about yourself, and really understand, like, what hurts me, what helps me, where can I be better? You got to figure out your weaknesses, because you don't want somebody to be able to say one word after you've built up all of this fame and wealth and things of this nature, and then be able to tear you back down because you haven't fully healed on the inside. I think people get very, very, very distracted by some of the tangible accolades, and they don't realize that, like you just said, I was exactly who I am before I had anything that's tangible. I think a lot of young men get lost in the process with if they had their own YouTube show, or if they had a check on Instagram, then they would become somebody else on the inside. But you're not going to get that until you become who you need to be on the inside first. And I think you said it. You said it before I could. And it's that I was the same young man, and I told you that this is where I would be. And I worked on it. And I knew that before I ever had, a 2K on Instagram or whatever the case might be, my own clothing line, or, being on CNN and working with the Today Show and things like that, I knew that here's what I have to do to get there. Here's who I have to be. I've been the same teammate. I've been the same athlete. I've been the same student to my teachers, because what it takes to be great and to have the tangible stuff, it has to start with inside it.
Tell everybody the website. Where can they find out more about Love One? Where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, you can go to loveonecompany.com. All of our t-shirts right now are like 60% off, so they're about $20 a piece. We are still shipping during the coronavirus. We're actually trying to get rid of all of our inventory. So that means that you might get extra stickers, you might get extra wristbands and things of that nature. So please tap in. We are in a very giving spirit right now. And now there's a lot of stuff that will be given. So loveonecompany.com. I also am starting my own YouTube channel, so you can look me up on YouTube at Ruquan Brown, and there's a plethora of videos already about me and my story. But I'll be just branching off so that more young men can tap in and learn about me as I continue to go on my journey.
Could not be more proud, could not be more impressed. Entrepreneur, man of the community, headed to Harvard, Banneker, Roosevelt, man of the community. Ruquan Brown, thank you very much, brother, for stopping by the New Normal.
Thank you, Ruquan.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. I appreciate y'all, man. Thank you.
Of course.
And we're back at the New Normal. Ruquan Brown, outstanding young man. It was a blessing to have him on. Now, though, the GOAT himself, East Coast recruiting analyst for Rivals, my main man, Mr. Adam Friedman. Adam, you and I, we go way back. It's been a while since we've connected on a podcast.
No doubt about it, man. It's good to see you. Glad you guys are safe and healthy during this weird time.
Absolutely. Tremendous times for us to connect virtually, to be able to bring some joy and talk a little bit about the student athletes. Darrell's got a couple of questions for you first.
Yeah, Adam, thank you for joining us, like Chad said. First of all, I'm wondering about how this is impacting you. You know, I know you're used to going out and recruiting players or just looking at them in person. Now, nobody can really go outside or be around other people, obviously. How do you assess a player when you can't really use the eye test and seeing them up close and personal, instead of just using a computer or a screen like we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to kind of change your routine a little bit, but you know, you evaluate players on film all the time, so we've got that at our fingertips there. We can, you know, get our hands on any training tape, any workout tape, anything to give us a status update on a player's development. We're taking a look at that. There were some camps that we were able to get out to earlier this year. The Rivals Camp Series did have a few events earlier this year. I was lucky enough to be able to go to the one in Miami and the one in Los Angeles. And so I can use that frame of reference now to go back and look at my players in my region and kind of reevaluate where I think they should fall in the national rankings. And, you know, we're adjusting just like everybody else is. So anything we can get our hands on, we're using to put into a player's body of work, and that's going to help us determine whether or not there should be any rankings changes for them or any ratings changes. There's a big difference between those two. So keep an eye out for that from Rivals later on this spring and early in the summer. We're going to try and stick to our normal schedule of updating the rankings. The next one should be for the 2021 class sometime in early June. And then again, right before the season in August. In the 2022 class, look for the full rankings for that class to be unveiled sometime late in the summer.
Has there been a change in the way, maybe, I don't know if college coaches reach out to you often or normally, but is there a change in the way players have talked to you or you've talked to players? And with that, how do you think colleges should go about dealing with this? Should they, obviously they use film, but since they can't go and talk to a player at home or in person, how do you think they should kind of adjust to this on their respective athletic campuses?
You know, it's funny you asked me that. I was thinking about this earlier today. It's really putting, you know, after talking with players and seeing how they've changed their timeline for their commitment, and they're talking about the things that are important to them. It's put college coaches under a microscope in terms of who's got great interpersonal skills, who can relate well, who can speak to players about things other than football, who is relatable, who has a personal life that is relatable to these players. And I think, you're seeing recruiting success from teams that are still able to connect with players on things other than football. And that's making even more of an impact now than it has in the past. So that's one of the things I've noticed about what's changed in the recruiting process right now. As far as evaluating prospects, the coaches are looking at some of the same stuff that we are, just anything that they can use to get an update on a player's progress. There are still DBs out there doing footwork drills. There are still quarterbacks out there throwing the ball. Guys can still go out on a run and things like that. So anything college coaches can get their hands on, they're evaluating just like we are.
We'll take the macro. I want to bring it down to the micro and speak about a few student athletes in particular, especially in the class of 2022, because many say that class is one of the ones that's the most affected, if not hurt, by the fact that people such as yourself can't get out to see them. As we look at quarterbacks in the DMV specific, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, which ones do you have your eyes on? Who would you say would be the top? I know that I'm excited to see what Wyatt Hagan does at St. John's this year. I love Jaden Saray out there at Wise. That young man is dynamic. But in your eyes, who's the top quarterback in the DMV in the class of 2022?
In the class of 2022, it's still going to work itself out, so there's lots and lots of time. But I've got my eye on Chase Williams out of Good Counsel.
Yes.
He brings a lot of great physical tools to the table. He's battle tested already. He's played in some big games that I know you were on the sideline for, bringing some dual threat abilities and a big arm to the table is something that really intrigues me and college coaches. As far as some of the other younger guys, John Griffith, I'm looking for some development out of him up at St. Francis. I know he's working very hard to continue his development there. You mentioned Hagan at St. John's. I'm excited to see him. I've heard a lot of great things. I've seen him practice a little bit here and there, and I want to see what he can do on the field. That'll be fun to watch. But those are some of the young guys I'm keeping my eye on right now.
And you mentioned Chase Williams. Chase is an outstanding quarterback. Thank you very much for mentioning him. Shout out. He's a WCAC champion, so he'll be coming back to defend that crown with more weapons this year. What student athletes as a total, who's rising in this class, who should we keep our eyes out for?
Some of the guys that I have rising right now, we've already done some rankings for the 2022 class. We did our top 100 watch list, and we've released some other 4 stars outside of that 100 watch list. But some guys that I'm keeping an eye on that we have yet to put stars on. Gunnar Gibbons out of Lord Botetourt in Virginia. He's a fantastic athlete, a guy who can play on offense or defense, a big body, very athletic. I'm excited about him. Out of Chantilly, Aiden, I hope I'm saying this last name right, Gobrea, I think is how you pronounce it. But he's a guy who I've seen some tape on, and I'm excited to see him in person. I was actually out at Chantilly last year to see the big offensive tackle, ended up at Stanford, I think is what it was. Pogrels, I think his name was. So those are 2 guys in Virginia. And some of the guys here in Maryland and DC and in Northern Virginia, we already know a lot about. But one who hasn't gotten enough headlines, I think, is the receiver from St. Francis, Denylon Morset. He's a fantastic player. He's got some offers, he's got some looks, but he's not from the Maryland area. He's from Georgia. So he's a guy who I think deserves some more headlines there, and he's somebody who certainly could have blown up a little bit more in this spring and summer. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he's able to do this fall. But a few more names I want to mention here. The big dog right now in Maryland, at least, is Denai Dennis Sutton out of McDonough. He's a fantastic player. He's one of the highest rated players in the 2022 class. But again, doesn't get enough headlines. I think this guy's a fantastic player. And then way down in Virginia, in Lynchburg, Zach Rice, big offensive tackle. This guy's got franchise left tackle written all over him. Keep an eye out for that name. And a receiver out of Richmond who's just emerged over the last couple of months here, Andre Green, St. Christopher's High School in Richmond, super athlete, great ball skills, just bouncy as they come. He runs great routes, somebody with a lot of potential, still kind of raw, but keep an eye out for him too.
Denylon Morissette, one of my absolute favorites. I go way back with him, watching him in middle school at the FBU National Championship. If he and John Griffith, if that St. Francis offense opens it up a little bit, that could be one heck of a combination.
No doubt about it. He's a big guy, 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", somewhere in there. I'm sure he's grown since the last time I saw him, and added some good weight to his frame. But he was already a great downfield threat. I'm excited to see how he's developed his route running on short and intermediate routes. He always did a good job catching the ball with his hands. But yeah, again, very excited to see him featured a little bit more in that St. Francis offense.
Best thing about it is that he's also an outstanding young man as well. So college coaches, he's got a ton of character. Adam Friedman, thank you very much for stopping by, brother. We appreciate you for your time, and we ask you to stay strong and stay safe, my brother.
Thanks for having me. You do the same.
Thank you, Adam.
Take care.
Ruquan report, bruh.